The 90s up until the mid-2000s was peak dinomania. It seemed like everybody wanted to cash in on the prehistoric days with toys, documentaries, games, and of course, movies. One such movie produced during this fad was Disney's Dinosaur, released in 2000. Though high grossing at the box office with visuals that still look good today, many felt that it was a mediocre film bogged down by its chatty primordial characters.
Ow, baby! Ow!
But few are aware of its lengthy production, which was troubled at times. Spending 12 years in development, the project would go through several different directors and numerous scripts. So how did Disney's Dinosaur become what it is today? What were the original ideas that didn't make the final cut? The idea that would become Disney's Dinosaur came about one day while filming RoboCop back in December of 1986. Phil Tippett, who was responsible for animating the Ed 209, overheard the crew having a conversation about why there seemed to be no good movies being made anymore, to which he suggested they make a dinosaur movie. Co-directing with RoboCop's Paul Verhoeven, Tippett's dinosaur idea would receive its first script written by Waylon Green of Wild Bunch fame in 1988, though Tippett specifies that it, quote, wasn't a screenplay per se, it was a story so that the studio could understand it. Simply referred to as dinosaurs, the story would have followed the challenges faced by a Styracosaurus and his herd as they trekked through a devastated wasteland to get to a promised land, a formula which took inspiration from the 1956 western Shane. In stark contrast with the film that was released, this early rendition would have been gritty, violent, and most importantly, have no dialogue, though a mammal named Surrey would serve as the audience surrogate. The ending would have saw the lead Styracosaurus fighting a T-Rex just as the asteroid that brings about the extinction of the dinosaurs slowly approaches. Though the horned dinosaur comes out as the victor, the asteroid makes impact, sparing only the mammals who eat the surviving smaller dinosaurs, which was to imply the rise of humanity. Verhoeven states that the ambitions for the film were to, quote, make something meaningful, archetypal, and dimensional instead of straight entertainment. Tippett also sought to use the film to expand upon the themes present in his short film Prehistoric Beast, which has plot similarities with this early iteration and its follow-up documentary CBS's Dinosaur. The Dinosaurs team pitched the film to Disney, though not as a member of the Disney canon. Instead, Disney's more mature-oriented and now defunct Hollywood Pictures was seen as a possible distributor. Tippett and Verhoeven sought to make the entire film using stop-motion animation, which meant its production cost would have been at least $72 million. However, the chairman of Disney at the time, Jeffrey Katzenberg, believed that the embryonic film had no audience to justify its cost and insisted that its budget should be $20 to $25 million, which the crew behind Dinosaurs felt was too low for their project. Disney further insisted that the animals sing and talk, once suggesting that Surrey should serve as the film's narrator. Eventually, the original team grew tired of Disney's insistent demands to remove the project's mature elements and left the project in 1990. In an interview with MTV, Tippett states, at a certain point, we were just intractable and said, this isn't the movie we wanted to make. And they said, okay, bye. In fact, I blew off some meeting with Jeffrey Katzenberg and thought, this was a waste of time. And I was banned from Dolby Drive for 5 years until he left. Per recommendation by Verhoeven, Tippett afterward went to work on the newly developing movie adaptation for the novel Jurassic Park, which had been offered to him while pitching his dinosaur movie. Concurrent to the original team's departure, Dennis Muren of Industrial Light and Magic was briefly attached to the project, though there are no known details about the extent of his involvement. Muren too would also go on to work on Jurassic Park's special effects. Disney soon hired Thomas G. Smith, executive producer of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, as director, and Jeannie Rosenberg, well known for Black Stallion, to write a new screenplay. Smith personally scoured out various companies across the former Soviet bloc to contract for the stop-motion animation and was also interested in using live-action lemurs to depict the mammals. However, tensions between Disney soon arose as they once again demanded a cute talking dinosaur story while Smith wanted to retain the original premise. Ultimately, Thomas Smith's tenure would be cut short as Katzenberg reassigned him to Honey, I Blew Up the Kid, as it was suffering from pre-production problems. With his departure from Dinosaurs, Thomas Smith chose stop-motion animator David Allen, who had also worked on Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, to replace him as director, once again continuing to retain the majority of the concepts that Tippett and Verhoeven had crafted. Among the known changes during the Allen era was that the Styracosaurus herd received names, the lead character in particular being Woot, and the antagonistic Tyrannosaurus being named Grozny. Surrey was also to be a Bush Baby-esque pro-simian portrayed uniquely as a person in a costume filmed in live action as opposed to the mix of stop motion and rod puppetry that were now set to be created by Will Vinton Studios. Throughout Allen's 6 months of direction, maquettes were made, concept art was produced, and even auditions for Surrey were conducted. So much work had been put into the film that Thomas Schumacher, president of the Disney Theatrical Group, asserted that, quote, "It seemed like practically everybody in Hollywood had tried their hand at it by now. There were piles of treatments and scripts." But the film's production would suddenly come to a halt in 1993. Observing how Jurassic Park, the highly anticipated film at the time, was utilizing CGI to create its dinosaurs, Disney seized development of their own prehistoric project to see how successful it would be. Upon its release, Park exceeded expectations by becoming the highest grossing film of all time until it was surpassed by Titanic in 1998. Desiring the same accolades, Disney's Dinosaur movie was put back into production at the company's featured animation division in 1994. Additionally, Disney chairman Michael Eisner also sought to tie in the film with the in-development Animal Kingdom attraction Dinoland USA. This culminated into the creation of the 1998 ride Countdown to Extinction, later renamed to match that of the film in 2000. After debating whether or not it should be a traditionally animated film, the movie would no longer be using any practical effects to portray its prehistoric bestiary. It was settled that they would be entirely computer generated. With production resumed, animators George Scribner and Ralph Sondog replaced David Allen as directors for the now titled Dinosaur project. Under their direction, the story underwent noticeably heavier alterations than Allen's. According to David Krentz, who was in charge of finalizing the animal designs, quote, "It was really difficult deciding what kind of story to tell, and every few months it went in another direction. A good example of this uncertain story direction would be the Vorax, a minor character that was to be a completely fictional species described as a combination of a pterosaur and a bird. Ultimately, 3 major changes remained to the final film. First, Styracosaurus was replaced by Iguanodon as the lead dinosaur due to how the filmmakers felt that it bore equestrian qualities that made them easier to animate, though the monohorn dinosaur would remain in the film. The diabolic Carnotaurus was preferred over Tyrannosaurus, albeit made larger like an Argentine dinosaur like Giganotosaurus. This decision was made primarily out of the feeling that T-Rex was overused in addition to being influenced by the hypothesis that it was actually a scavenger rather than an active hunter. Finally, the mammal sidekick would ultimately be based on modern lemurs as the filmmakers found the mammals that coexisted with the dinosaurs as well as the ancestors of lemurs to be too unappealing. After solving the challenge of creating the lemur's fur in 3D, the proof of concept test was released in March 1996. This test, along with storyboards, give us a glimpse of what the story was like at this point in time, with a rather biblical theme. The plot would have followed a hot-headed iguanodon named Noah that suffers from prophetic visions of the future. These premonitions cause Noah to be an outcast to his herd as its leader, who is implied to be his childhood friend, believes he is trying to usurp him.
It's so obvious. Why can't they see it? Because they're cretins. What? You know, dinosaurs. You know, they have solid bone heads, no brains. You're idiots. Hey, wait a minute. What? What'd I say?
Accompanied by his wisecracking lemur sidekick named Adam and having a romantic interest in a female member of his species, Noah was also to be close to his grandparents who would dramatically sacrifice themselves to the Carnotaurus pursuing their herd during the film. The proof of concept test instantly won over Michael Eisner, who greenlit the project regardless of production cost and how long it would take to make. However, Disney needed a company to produce the 3D animation as their own in-house studio. Buena Vista Visual Effects was incapable of handling the task. Contracting Industrial Light and Magic proved to be difficult because the manpower it would take to create that one film would result in the company building an entire studio just for it alone. Pixar was not chosen either because the filmmakers wanted the visuals to be, quote, photorealistic, in addition to the looming fear that Steve Jobs, who owned Pixar at the time, would break their contract with Disney. In April, Eisner decided to disband Buena Vista and purchased the highly coveted DreamQuest Images, famous for creating the liquid alien in James Cameron's The Abyss. The recently acquired company would be merged with the computer graphics department of Disney Featured Animation to help bring the computer-generated dinosaurs to life alongside animators with prior experience in 2D and stop motion. After experimenting with computer-generated and miniature backgrounds, filming real-life locations was chosen due to budgetary concerns. Releasing another animation test in October 1996, the new plot, which seems to have evolved from the childhood friends subplot from the Noah draft, centered around the relationship between two brother iguanodons.
How can you be my brother and be so stupid? When we get back to the herd, don't really hang out with me, all right? You kind of embarrass me, just a little bit, all right? It's more of a personality thing.
Close to the final product, one of the brothers, Aladar, gets separated from his herd as a child only to find himself marooned on an island inhabited by lemurs who become his adoptive family. But, like the completed film, an asteroid devastates their island, forcing Aladar and the surviving lemurs towards the mainland where he is reunited with his estranged brother upon joining the dinosaur herd. However, the reunion becomes bittersweet as his brother is disgusted by his newfound touchy-feely ways that he has learned from the lemurs, resulting in Aladar facing a moral dilemma over where his allegiance lies. As director George Scribner left to pursue Disney Imagineering and was subsequently replaced by Eric Layden of Nightmare Before Christmas fame, Disney continued to insist that the protagonist should talk to the dismay of the production team. The dislike of talking dinosaurs was so strong among the crew that producer Pam Marsden noted that there were crew members that would have abandoned the project if the dinosaurs were going to sing. The filmmakers had experimented with subtitles in the thinking style of narration found in films such as Homeward Bound, but Eisner was unconvinced by the latter method, calling it strange as he felt it, quote, emphasized the technical inability to accomplish the sophisticated facial animation required for believable mouth movements. Having the iguanodons physically talk with their beaks was considered, but they found the animation test to be too goofy. Instead, anthropomorphic lips were added to the iguanodons as the filmmakers felt it helped them convey emotion better and made them more heroic. Eric Layden justified the reasoning for this decision, stating, "In talking to one expert, there was evidence on some beaks of having small perforations on the top edge of the beak. This might have been a blood supply for lips. Of course, it is a difficult paleontological question. Soft tissue disappears over time. If people found the fossil remains of an elephant, would they figure out that an elephant had a trunk?" However, David Krentz, who had a deep interest in paleontology, initially felt troubled by the artistic liberties of the film, stating, "Taking animals that I loved and putting lips on them was hard. I often became angry with myself because of the damage I was doing to everything science had accomplished. It was when I realized that these were characters and not scientific dinosaurs I began to relax." Feeling that the concept of talking dinosaurs would have been too strange for audiences, an initial idea that was ultimately unused was to have no dialogue during the first portion of the film until the introduction of the lemurs who teach it to Aladar. The Iguanodon brothers plot would also be scrapped as the writers found it difficult to rationalize that Aladar, who had been raised as a dinosaur and wanted to return to his kin, would side with the lemurs. In addition, they felt the lemurs' lessons of altruism would come across as forced as a result. So the story team decided to have Aladar be born on the lemur island with no siblings. Filming for live-action backplates commenced in 1998 across various locations including California, Hawaii, and Venezuela, though shooting was not entirely smooth. On February 28th, a crew member was killed and another was severely burned when a metal boom microphone hit a power line while shooting in California. In addition to the fatality, Disney was also experiencing problems with another one of its animated features in development, Kingdom of the Sun, the precursor to The Emperor's New Groove, as production troubles caused Kingdom's release date to be rescheduled to Christmas of 2000 instead of summer of that same year. To fulfill agreements with its promotional partners, Dinosaur was placed in Kingdom's release slot, resulting in many of its scenes being cut in order to meet the new deadline. Though the ever-occurring budgetary issues that had pestered the film since its conception contributed to their removal as well. The most notable of these scrapped scenes was the river crossing which, as the title suggests, would have had the herd cross through a river full of deadly aquatic predators. The sequence was so developed by the time it was cut that the mosasaurus who was to attack the heroes had been modeled and fully textured. A more minor removal was feathers for several of the dinosaurs, such as Velociraptor. By the end of its production, Dinosaur's animation team consisted of over 400 to 500 people, 15 of which were software engineers that wrote 450 programs, and 30,000 processing hours per week, amounting to 3.2 million hours in its entirety. The film's total elements occupied 45 terabytes of disk space stored on 70,000 CD-ROMs. It was the most expensive movie ever made at the time, with a budget of $127 million. Effects supervisor Jim Hillen describes the sentiment among the film's animation team upon its completion, saying, "You ask one person and they say, well, we're never doing this again. You ask another person and they say, we should make use of the technology and move forward. I think what's being said is, we'll never do Dinosaur the way we did Dinosaur again." Impressed with the animator's work on the film, Disney would form the Secret Lab in 1999 to compete in the lucrative CG animation market. The company was so confident that Dinosaur would be a ginormous success for them that they were even reportedly taking sequels into consideration. After being secretive about major details concerning the film due to fears of other studios plagiarizing it, the first trailer was released on November 22, 1999, consisting of the first 6 minutes of the film, which, according to concept artist William Stout, was a final attempt by the creative team to convince the company to ditch the idea of talking dinosaurs for good. The trailer stunned audiences with its photorealistic visuals. However, when the public became aware that the dinosaurs were going to have dialogue, their interest waned, as Stout explains. "I went out on the road to promote Dinosaur at comic and sci-fi conventions armed with 2 video trailers. First, I would show our 5-minute dialogueless trailer. The reaction was palpable and immediate. They were ready to hand me money for tickets in advance. Then I would show trailer number 2, the one in which the dinosaurs, spoke. It was like letting the air out of a Zeppelin. I could see the Zeppelin crashing to Earth right before my eyes as the people began to ask in sad, disappointed tones, 'The dinosaurs aren't going to talk, are they?' And I had to tell them that, yes, they were going to talk. Their enthusiasm vanished. Furthermore, the BBC had done the same technique of placing CGI dinosaurs in live-action backdrops, albeit presented in a documentary format with Walking with Dinosaurs. This acclaimed recreation of prehistoric life had just aired in the US a month prior to Disney's upcoming Mesozoic blockbuster, contributing to the growing disinterest for the film. On May of 2000, Disney's Dinosaur opened to a $38 million weekend, the company's third best opening ever at the time. But critics and audiences alike still felt that dinosaurs with the capability to speak was unnecessary and broke the film's immersion.
I really like this movie, aside from the beauty of it, the sheer beauty. I mean, they had animators galore working on this and new 3D effects, and they built a new digital studio. You can't argue with me that it was beautiful.
No, I'm saying it was beautiful. I'm saying, though, that I think there's a funny line that you cross over in realism. And after you get a little bit too realistic, you can no longer have the funny character voices. I didn't feel that way at all. For example, in The Land of Time Forgot, which is about talking dinosaurs, no problem at all. Right. But in Jurassic Park, you wouldn't expect the dinosaurs to talk because they're real dinosaurs.
There were humans versus dinosaurs.
Yeah, but
there are no humans in this movie.
In this movie, they look so good. They look so good that somehow you don't want them to be diminished into characters in this kind of human story.
In total, Dinosaur grossed $137 million domestically. Though nowhere near a flop, this was not the box office record breaker Disney had hoped for, nor did it cover for the motion picture's expensive production costs, let alone the millions spent on marketing it. The movie's performance hurt the newly created Secret Lab the most. Without any Dinosaur sequels and the cancellation of their adult-oriented animated film Wildlife, the company would become defunct the following year. Disney would continue pursuing 3D animation, eventually achieving the immense success they desired with 2013's Frozen, all while acquiring their competitors ILM and Pixar under Eisner's successor Bob Iger. But they had practically forgotten their first fully computer-generated film. Maintaining a small fan base today, Dinosaur is considered a missed opportunity by those who worked on it, one of them being veteran animator Floyd Norman, who boldly stated, "With all due respect to my esteemed colleagues and friends who labored long and hard on the Disney motion picture Dinosaur, all I can say is, what a waste." With a little bit of Disney magic and imagination, we could have made a really good movie. With today's Disney, I'm afraid that's simply too much to ask. Ironically, as William Stout notes, the final budget for the film cost more than the initial pitch back from the late 1980s. Paul Verhoeven remarked that the original version, quote, would have survived for a long time because the concept was so unconventional and daring. Dinosaurs are so popular that the movie would have been a success in spite of our non-formulaic approach. In contrast, Phil Tippett has been more solemn regarding the project, telling MTV News in 2011, quote, "I wasn't sad when we got kicked off of that, because we could tell where it was going to go. Many production items from its lengthy development still have yet to surface, such as a test film when stop motion was still being considered." Concept artist Pete Von Schalle describes this situation best in 2009, claiming that, quote, "Mountains of great work was done by many big shot dino artists and put in that big pile of stuff nobody ever gets to see. Hopefully, it will leak out over time."